What's up, YouTube? It's your boy Disco. Are we live? Is this thing on? You bet your tuchus. I hope you guys enjoyed our wide receiver and running backs week 10 rankings because right now we're about to deliver you our quarterbacks and tight ends. So let's get started. Without further ado, let's get to cooking. Gotta let Russ cook. Russell Wilson is coming in at number 10 for our week 10 quarterbacks. The Commanders, the Washington Commanders, give up 1.56 passing touchdowns to opposing quarterbacks on a weekly basis. They're tied for the eighth most advantageous matchup on the week in that department. The Commanders also give up close to 18 fantasy points to opposing quarterbacks. So we love Russell Wilson in this spot. Honorable mention, by the way, to Daniel Jones. I think he's in a great spot, but he just didn't make the top 10 this week. Moving on, let's go to number 9. That's none other than Jared Goff. The Texans defense gives up the most passing touchdowns to opposing quarterbacks on a weekly basis at 2.11 passing touchdowns per game. They also give up the 8th most fantasy points to opposing quarterbacks at 20.11 fantasy points weekly. Let's go to number 8, and not a lot of people are going to like this, but I don't care because the numbers don't lie. And that's none other than Trevor Lawrence versus the Minnesota Vikings coming in at number 8. The Vikings D allows the 7th most passing touchdowns on a weekly basis at 1.75 passing touchdowns to opposing quarterbacks per game. They also allow the 4th most passing yards at 271.25 passing yards per game. They also allow the 2nd most passing completions per game at 25.12 passing completions per game. So yeah, he's in a good spot. Vikings are very advantageous. Let's talk about Brock Purdy and the matchup he has because he's coming in at number 7. Number 7, Bucs defense is tied for the 2nd most advantageous matchup on the week for opposing quarterbacks to throw passing touchdowns at 2 per game. They allow the 3rd most passing yards at 273.89 passing yards per game to opposing quarterbacks. They allow the most passing completions on a weekly basis to opposing quarterbacks at 25.78 passing completions per game. They allow the 4th most rushing yards to opposing quarterbacks, and we know Brock Purdy has sneaky athleticism at 29.33 rushing yards per game. Finally, they allow the average of 25.11 fantasy points per game. That's a very advantageous matchup. It's a very good matchup. I really do like Brock Purdy in this spot, and plus they get Christian McCaffrey back. Can't deny that. Let's talk about number 6, Jaden Daniels. Steelers allow at least 1 passing touchdown per game. They also allow the 10th most passing yards per game at 238.5 and the 12th most completions. With that being said, he's an explosive athlete in an explosive spot. They're going to need to rely on his legs, especially to get away from the pass rush. I think he's going to produce, and I think he's going to produce at a very high level this week. I love him in this spot. Here's another guy I love in this spot, and a lot of people wrote him off, and so did I. And I'm not writing him off anymore. Making our top 5, we got Mr. Sam Darnold versus the Jacksonville Jaguars. The Jags D is tied for most allowed passing touchdowns per game at 2.11 passing touchdowns per game to opposing quarterbacks. They also give up the 2nd most passing yards to opposing quarterbacks at 275.33 pass yards per game, the 6th most passing completions at 23.78, and the 3rd most rushing yards. And Darnold's got some sneaky athleticism, and they allow just over 30 rushing yards to opposing quarterbacks. And they also allow the most fantasy points to opposing quarterbacks on a weekly basis at 27.33. He's in a smash spot. Love him. Love Justin Jefferson. Shit, I even love Aaron Jones and TJ Hawkinson. It's a good spot for all of them this week. They should all be starting in your fantasy lineups. Coming in at number 4, we got Mr. Jalen Hurts. Now, A.J. Brown is questionable, so we're going to have to rely on his leg a little bit more. But let's talk about what the Dallas defense allows on a weekly basis to opposing quarterbacks. They give up the 7th most passing TDs to opposing quarterbacks at 1.62 passing touchdowns per game, the 14th most passing yards at 230.12, only 18 completions per game, so it's chunk plays. If you're only allowing 18 completions, but that amount of yardage, he's going to hit them for chunk plays. Those are going to go to the house. I love this. It's the 9th most advantageous matchup for rushing QBs. And you know what? Just for QBs who run the football in general. And they allow 25.38 rush yards on a weekly basis, just based off of his ability and, you know, A.J. Brown potentially not playing and Dallas Goedert being on the fringe. I love him to rush over his yards this week. Make sure you smash the over on his yardage this week and pretty much every other week because he's been absolutely electric. And finally, the Dallas Cowboys allows the 5th most fantasy points on a weekly basis at 21.75 weekly. All right, coming in at number 3, we got Josh Allen. He's in a really, really good spot. He's got the Indianapolis Colts, who are free fantasy points. They should have started Anthony Richardson because Joe Flacco wasn't it. Anyways, the Colts defense is tied for 8th most allowed touchdowns on a weekly basis to opposing quarterbacks at 1.56 passing touchdowns per game. They also allow the seventh most passing yards at 248.11 pass yards per game, eighth most passing completions at 22.56, and 12th most fantasy points to opposing quarterbacks at 18.44 fantasy points per game. Love Josh Allen in the spot. I think he's going to surpass that number significantly. He could easily be the QB1 this week. Another guy who can easily be the QB1 this week is none other than Mr. Joe Burrow. I love the blue steel look here. He's playing the Baltimore Ravens Thursday Night Football. It's going to happen tonight as I'm recording this. It's November 7th, so they play tonight. Baltimore allows the third most passing touchdowns on a weekly basis to opposing quarterbacks at 1.89 passing touchdowns per game. They also allow the most passing yards by far, like at least 26 yards more than second, at 301.78 passing yards per game. They also allow the third most passing completions at 25.11 and the third most fantasy points per game at 24.11. I will say, I am kind of concerned that T. Higgins is currently doubtful, and he does open up a lot of things for Jamar Chase. But with that being said, it's still a great matchup for Gesicki. It's still a great matchup for Jamar Chase, and definitely an excellent matchup for Joe Burrow. It doesn't really matter who's on the field. He's going to cook. Speaking of somebody who's going to cook, we're going to stay in the same matchup, Lamar Jackson. This is a great matchup. Cincinnati Bengals defense really sucks. Obviously, Thursday Night Football. Bengals passing D is tied for ninth most advantageous matchup on the league. They allow 1.44 passing touchdowns to opposing quarterbacks in that department. They also allow the fourth most rushing yards on a weekly basis to opposing quarterbacks. Lamar Jackson, hello, he likes to run the football, and he's going to do that all night long. Smash the over on his rushing props for series. They allow 33.67 rushing yards to opposing quarterbacks, and they allow the sixth most fantasy points on a weekly basis to opposing quarterbacks at 20.56. Now that we've done the quarterbacks, let's get right into our tight ends, and we're going to stay in the same game. We got Mr. Mark Andrews. He's in a really good spot this week, and I know, guys, last week he was in a good spot too, and he didn't really deliver. It doesn't matter. All right, stick to your guns, play your studs, and Mark Andrews is a stud, and the Bengals secondary is tied for second for allowing the most receiving touchdowns per game to opposing tight ends. The seventh most advantageous matchup on the week when it comes to tight ends for receptions. They allow 5.78 receptions per game, and the eighth most receiving yards allowed to opposing tight ends at 58.44 per game. Looks like Isaiah Likely's banged up. He's going to be the lone guy. If it's going to be Kolar, shoot me now. All right, coming in at number 9. Once again, we mentioned this guy earlier, and these guys are all great stacking options. But yes, he's questionable, and if he's not the ready to play this week, I'm going to swap him out for Mike Gesicki or TJ Hawkinson. These guys are both honorable mentions. Even Theo Johnson, and John Smith. These guys are all honorable mentions. They're all tight ends that I expect to smash. They just didn't make the cut for the top 10. Here's why he's coming in at number 9. Okay. Cowboys are tied for the third most advantageous matchups when it comes to allowing receiving touchdowns to opposing tight ends. They also allow 44.12 receiving yards on a weekly basis. And with A.J. Brown potentially out, a healthy Goddard should absolutely smash this week. Last time we saw, Dallas Goddard in a spot where there was no A.J. Brown and Devonta Smith was in, he broke fantasy football. And I'm hoping and anticipating that he'll do the same. Hopefully he's healthy. I have a heck of a lot of exposure to him in a lot of redraft leagues and definitely in best ball as well. All right, coming in at number 8, staying in the same game, we got Jake Ferguson. No Dak, plus an incredible Eagles pass rush. The check down and volume opportunity is going to be there, especially, with Trey Lance as the quarterback or whoever the other Shmi is, was Cooper Rush or whatever his name. Anyways, coming in at number 7, we got Kyle Pitts. All right. The Saints secondary has been kind of decent defending opposing tight ends, but here are the outliers. They allow just under 5 receptions per game. They allow the 11th most receiving yards to the position, chunk plays, a banged up Drake London, spells for success, and I like Kyle Pitts to find the end zone this week. Coming in at number 6, I know, guys. I know. He's been disappointing. I also said don't draft him, but I love the spot he's in here. We got Dalton Kincaid at number 6. The Colts are tied for second most advantageous matchup for tight ends, finding the end zone on the week. They also give up the third most receptions to the position at 6.33 per game. They allow the 7th most receiving yards at 59.22 and the 5th most fantasy points on a weekly basis. Very, 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 very advantageous matchup for Dalton Kincaid. He should definitely be starting in your lineups and great DFS play, especially on Drafters Fantasy. Make sure you use promo code DISCO to double your initial deposit on Drafters. Dollar for dollar up to $100 Rooskies. Moving on. All right. A lot of people are going to disagree. I don't care. This guy's matchup proof. All right. Number 5, we got Trey McBride. Jets have been good against the tight end, but McBride is what we call matchup proof. Plain and simple. Moving on. Number 4. This guy has never made my list, and it's about time I put some respect on his name. It's Kate Otten, number 4. Once again, not an advantageous matchup. 49ers have been elite against opposing tight ends, but the 49ers do give up just under 5 receptions to the position. They also have a lot of passing game and volume opportunities surpass his matchup based analysis simply because there's nobody else to pass the ball to. He's the only guy there. All right. Number 3, another guy who doesn't have like the greatest matchup, but they give up it's Travis Kelce, number 3, against the Denver Broncos. Broncos give up just under 5 receptions on a weekly basis to opposing tight ends. Not great, not terrible. They also give up 41.33 receiving yards. Also not great, not terrible. It's Travis Kelce. He's been coming on as of late. Don't overthink it. All right. Number 2, guys. This one should have been number 1, but like the guy who's at number 1 has just been playing out of his fucking mind. And they get we'll get to him. All right, number 2, we got Evan Ingram. I love him in this spot, and I love him rest of the season because if you look at the splits, Evan Ingram absolutely cooks when Christian Kirk's out of the offense. All right, he will get some of the most advantageous opportunities here where the Vikings do suck against defending opposing receivers, right? They're one of the most advantageous matchup for receivers, not necessarily tight ends, but we've also seen 2 tight ends in a similar spot finish as tight end 1 on the week when they played this Vikings defense. I think he's in a splash spot. I think he's in a spectacular area to finally perform, and I really do love him. Speaking of somebody I really do love, this guy's a character. He's fun. He's enjoyable, and he is currently the best tight end in football. I love Brock Bowers, but he's got a bye week. Anyways, number 1, George Kittle versus the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. The Buccaneers is tied for the 4th most advantageous matchup on the week for tight ends. When it comes to receiving touchdowns, they allow the 4th most receptions at 6.11 per game to the position. They also allow the 2nd most receiving yards to the position, allowing 69.67 receiving yards to tight ends. They allow the 4th most fantasy points to opposing tight ends on a weekly basis as well. That's it, guys. That's our weekly rankings. Join me tonight, which is Thursday night, November 7th, at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. I will be joined by my co-host with the most. My Mind is a Weapon, Fantasy Football Sleazeball. We'll also be live 7 p.m. Eastern Time, going over the entire Sunday slate. We're going to give you guys our drafters pick'ems locks tonight. We want to give you guys some free money. Make sure you use promo code DISCO. I hope you enjoy the video. Smash the like. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't, but please smash the like. It really does help the channel go a really long way. I hope you guys enjoy the content. Leave a comment. Let me know what you guys think. Until next time, y'all, which is like 7 hours. Peace.